Some of my favourite storylines within Bridgerton have always been the side stories. Don't get me wrong, yes, I've always enjoyed the main storylines for the most part as well, but I do think that a lot of the moments I enjoyed most across the course of the show's run have been from the supporting cast of each season. I found the Anthony storyline extremely compelling and sad during Season 1. Eloise and Theo in Season 2 were very cute, as was the extremely short-lived bromance between Colin and Sir Philip. The Lady Whistledown storyline, of course, was super intriguing across the first 2 seasons before it took the primary focus of the story as Season 3. Then Season 3 also had that cute little courtship of John and Francesca. No matter how it ended by the finale, or where it goes into the next season, it was cute while it lasted. However, beyond just side storylines, I think my favourite stuff is the rather low-stakes side love stories, of which we were richly rewarded over the course of the 3rd season in particular. For starters, we had the Featherington sisters and their quest to try to get pregnant so their son can inherit the title of Lord Featherington, and this was honestly just excellent comic relief where Portia has a slow breakdown thinking about how her daughters are incapable of doing even this one thing right. It's an all-timer of a scene when she realises that they both expect to get pregnant and yet aren't even having sex properly. Then of course after that, the baby races on, only to be unexpectedly won by late entrant Penelope. Beyond that, of course, we also have the story of Violet and her second love. Now obviously that one's not fully finished with, but it was still a very cute sort of storyline that we saw playing out. Lady Danbury's brother had some excellent aura and charisma, and they have good chemistry. I'm eager to see how it progresses into Season 4 if they do indeed choose to follow up with that. Although, I think I would be rather surprised if they didn't. Anyway, I just think that these all add something a little extra to the story, and it makes it all feel a little bit larger in scope. It makes it feel more diverse and interesting, and I really hope that they keep going with this sort of thing because I think at points you need to take a step back from the main couple to give it time to breathe in order to ensure it doesn't burn itself out too quickly or become oversaturated. They do have a lot of time to fill after all. Thus, we're coming to the hot take of the day that I want to discuss in this video. In the last little while, I've been thinking more about Portia Featherington, and the more I think, the more I kind of want to see her character get some sort of love story. The main reasoning behind this is rather simple. I think it would be very funny. For starters, the Featherington clan have always been somewhat ridiculous, wearing garish clothing and being rather out there with their manners and desperation to be noticed by high society. Thus, it would be rather fun to see Portia behaving the same way in this context. Secondly, I just think she's one of the better characters and portrayals in the story, and I want more of the character. I have no idea if she's going to be in Season 4, considering it does feel like her overall narrative has come to a bit of an end. I mean, her 3 daughters are all married off now. Her whole arc in the story has surrounded this endless quest to ensure that they're all well settled, and now that it's done, they might not bother to have her appear again. It'd be a shame though, because she does add a lot of flavour to the story, and so I figure the best way to keep her around is to springboard her into some sort of storyline like this. Then I started thinking, should this be something they follow through with? Is this a type of thing that would work for the character? Is it even something her character would deserve at all? I suppose we'd better explore her backstory to get some sort of springboarding point. When we first meet Portia, and indeed the rest of the Featherington family, they're presented as being a bit of a joke. When they're presented before the Queen in front of the rest of high society, Prudence faints, and then they get strips torn off them by Lady Whistledown, which only serves to humiliate the family even more. They then get the news that a distant cousin Marine is coming to stay with them in London, and whilst at first Portia's expecting somebody ugly and graceless, it turns out the opposite's true. Whoops. Immediately, she singles her out as a threat to her daughters because they simply pale in comparison. Marina ends up getting a lot of suitors, whilst Portia's daughters? None. Her troubles quickly spiral even further when it's discovered that Marina's pregnant and the father's off at war. In order to prevent a scandal that would in turn engulf her own family, Portia decides the best thing to do is to confine her to her quarters for the time being, before rapidly changing course and deciding she needs a husband, pronto. She takes her to the slums to try to show her the fate that awaits her if she doesn't get married, and instead bears some random dude's love child. And then she pushes Marina into trying to get married to some older men who need an heir, before they kick the bucket and won't ask too many questions about a baby born maybe 3 months premature being so big. She keeps pushing Marina to get married, and eventually, she manages to ensnare Colin into an engagement, but Lady Whistledown's reveal brings it all crashing down alongside their reputation. At the same time, it turns out that her loveless marriage to her husband is not only, as I said, loveless, but also worthless. I feel like in that day and age you either married for love or for security, and it seems that Portia got neither of those things because her idiot husband has managed to gamble away all of their money to the point that their daughters have no money to serve as a dowry. This guy is a useless husband that does nothing right and almost ruins everybody's life and his whole family. Even when he finally wins all his money back, which he does through a boxing scam by the way, he gets murdered and the money is lost. He can't even die without screwing over his family. No wonder nobody ever talked about this dude ever again after he died. I mean, wasn't he visiting a prostitute as well? Come on, mate. Anyway, he dies and she's up shit creek without a paddle at this point because she has no money, and their house is apparently tied up with the title and thus is in the male line. Therefore, they have nothing and are going to depend on the generosity of the new Lord Featherington. When he arrives, he actually seems rather competent, providing a dowry for Philippa to get married at long last and cracking onto Cressida and giving her rubies. Portia starts to worry that they're going to get turned out into the streets, and so she plots to try to get Prudence married to Jack. She succeeds in forcing him to propose, all to try to secure the future of her family, but he reveals to her later that he's broke as well, so she's back to square one, but now with a partner in crime. The pair concoct a scheme for Jack to scam the shit out of the Ton, taking investments from the gentleman for a fictional ruby mine and using this to increase their status and prestige before they make a getaway to America. Here they even have a little bit of flirtation. There are some vibes between them, and they even kiss on the night of the big ball at the Featherington household. However, it becomes clear to her that in the end, this guy doesn't really care about her daughters, and so in the end, she hustles him too. She gives him enough money for him to make a quick escape to America, but she keeps the rest for herself along with a forged document leaving the title and estate to the eldest male child of one of her daughters. Once again, romance didn't end up working out for her, but she did make the best of it and got the family into a very good position. This brings us to the third season. Whilst things are going well, they could still be better, as her daughters need to have a male heir soon to get the heat off and stop people investigating any further into Jack's disappearance, and the fact that they're suddenly wealthy again thanks to the money from the Ton. For the meantime, Portia's lied about it, and she pretends that it's from her dead aunt Petunia. While she has to battle the stupidity of her oldest daughters, she also serves as a massive wet blanket in the life of her youngest daughter Penelope in this season, always making her feel like shit, which I will say was a bit depressing and didn't reflect very well on her. At the same time, I think it was there to showcase that she has an extremely cynical view on love and romance. She sees that Penelope wants to have some sort of love match, but she thinks it ain't gonna happen. That's her lived experience after all. However, when Lord Debling appears in Penelope's life, she's all for it, hell yeah! The dude is rich, pleasant, and whilst their connection isn't romantic, she would be set for life. Even better is that he's gonna go off on his travels for 3 years or something like that? For Portia, this would have been a dream come true. If only she was a bit younger, she could have married this guy and lived in luxury and happiness in a big estate with this guy nowhere to be seen. Of course, eventually, this all leads to Pen and Colin getting engaged, and Portia being taken rather by surprise by everything. Over the course of the season, Penelope continues to prove that she was capable, and she didn't need her mother's help or attention. She could succeed in spite of it, and then when she turns around and helps Portia out of a jam with the investigation of the fortune, and by letting her have the credit for planning a ball, Portia realizes she's been wrong all along and comes to understand just how special her daughter really is. She ends the season with 3 new grandchildren, one by each of her daughters, with the sole boy, Penelope's son, becoming the new Lord Featherington. Now, when you look at it simply from the perspective of all that, in terms of Portia's overall story, it does seem like it's come to a bit of an ending. The reality is that pretty much her entire arc across these first 3 seasons of the show has been dedicated to trying to get her daughters to marry well, and then also trying to avoid their family becoming destitute and the laughingstock of the Ton. It's been a long and winding road for a character to get to that place, but it's done now. All 3 of her daughters are married, and now they no longer have any sort of financial stress. Of course, her eldest 2 have their own homes that they live in with their husbands, but then the main estate also belongs to the little baby boy. She can mooch off her grandson forever now, especially since his fortunes are going to be propped up by the fact that Penelope is rich from her own endeavours, that Colin is seemingly Mr. Moneybags, and then of course there's all the money that they stole from the Ton with Jack in Season 2. This little fella is already loaded, bless his heart. Thus, you could argue that there's nothing left for her character to do in the story. She even becomes far closer and more loving towards her daughters after seasons of being a very tough, love-minded woman who is not very warm and acts only for, I guess you could say, the greater good. Therefore, some writers might simply consign her character to the trash heap and say, well, she's done and dusted. Nothing else to be seen and done here. I can't help but feel that this would be a sad development for the overall quality of the show, though. I think Bridgerton needs a lot of fun side plots, and nothing's more low stakes and silly than a potential love story for Portia of all people. You can't tell me it wouldn't be fun. Plus, I think there's an actual story here. Think about it. The whole point of Bridgerton has been about the pursuit of love above all. Despite all the red flags and the hurdles along the way, Daphne and Simon can't stand to be apart from one another and keep being drawn back together again. According to Anthony, he doesn't want love. He solely wants to marry somebody who can be the perfect Lady Bridgerton. Nothing more, nothing less. However, what ends up happening? He ends up vibing with the older sister who's better for him romantically in every single way, even if she doesn't fit into his narrow mold of what a wife should be. And once again, after a downpouring of drama and angst, love conquered all. In Season 3, the story is that Penelope is determined to find a love match and has been pining after Colin for years. Despite her trying her best to get over him, she's just unable to, and he quickly falls for her as well. Once again, true love conquers all. It's the very same sort of tale in the Queen Charlotte spin-off. The whole point of it is that through their trials, troubles, and tribulations, their love is what guides them to the other side. It's going to be the exact same thing playing out on our screens in each of the subsequent seasons. Mark my words. However, then you have a character like Portia who's extremely cynical. She's very much about pushing her daughters into the pathway of men who can provide for them above all else. That is what she considers to be essential, that above all else, they'll be financially secure. That was the whole point of her marriage to Lord Featherington. It wasn't about love, but about security and prestige. Thus, his downfall and death is meant to show that that sort of thinking, whilst pragmatic isn't always going to work out either. I think that's the importance of her storyline across season 3. It follows up on this sort of thinking. She's constantly ridiculing Penelope for trying to find a love match and not settling for the safety of Lord Debling. However, in the end, she's the one who's humbled by her daughter, who shows that not only does she create her own security through her work as Lady Whistledown, but she also got the love match and the lordship and everything else. Her character is a complete rejection of the Portia Featherington mentality, and yet she ends up with the biggest win in the family. Really, she's the future of the family now. Thus, I think it ties nicely back into the theme of the show that Portia could grow as a character and actually get some sort of romance going forward. Who with? It doesn't really matter, because that's the point. That love is the most important thing. I think it would show some growth for the character beyond her very brief epilogue with all the grandkids, and it would just be nice. She doesn't even have to get married. I'm pretty sure she's too old to get pregnant, so just let her live her life as an unattached widow if that's what you want. She was in a miserable marriage for too long, and now her daughters are grown and don't need guidance. If she isn't written out, I think this would be the best direction for her character. For the love of God though, no love triangles. Watch the monkey's paw curl as they inject her into the Violet and Marcus storyline. Ugh, no thank you. Anyway though, with all that being said, these have been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What do you think of the idea of a Portia Featherington romance story? Are you on board with it? Maybe not. I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.